In this session, we will learn about application of the principle of virtual work for deformable bodies. So in one of the earlier sessions, we saw how to use the principle of virtual work for calculating the support reactions of systems. So in that case, we considered systems as rigid bodies, and the overall force field and its dot product with the virtual displacement field, setting it equal to 0 was the the principle of virtual work in that case. And this left hand side basically was the external virtual work, because we were giving for a body we were giving a rigid body movement of a certain amount, and this amount we were able to choose as 1 also. Subsequently, all of the forces which were applied on the body, we were calculating the overall work done, and then setting it equal to 0 was what was giving us the support reactions. Okay. So in the earlier cases, the bodies were rigid, and hence there was no question of internal virtual work, which means they were not deforming and the strain energy was not being generated. Now, in this case, let us consider a system like this. Let's say the system is in equilibrium. So what it means is that the summation of F is equal to 0 and summation of moments is equal to 0 for the system. Okay, and let U of x be the displacement field. So if x axis is oriented like that, let U of x gives the displacement field. In that case, if we have chosen 2 points 1 and 2 on the beam, so what we are saying is that the value of U at x1 is U1 and value of U at x2 is U2. Okay, and of course U of x needs to be geometrically compatible, which means at support A, U of x at A, that should be 0 for compatibility, for geometric compatibility, because this is a fixed boundary, and also the derivative of U at xa should be 0. So these are the two geometric conditions which this field should satisfy. So whatever U of x will be, it has to be geometrically compatible for it to be the deformation field of this particular system. And another important thing is we are considering small deformations. So the strains are small, displacements are small, etc. Now let's consider a situation where we consider the system as above, and we apply a small, arbitrary and geometrically compatible displacement field. We are calling it delta U of x. Okay, and let's call it the virtual displacement, right? So let's say if this blue line shows the field U of x, or the displacement. Let's say we apply a delta U of x on top of it. Okay, so the points 1 and 2 which were there at locations 1 and 2 earlier, let's say they now move on to positions 1 dash and 2 dash. Okay, so one thing to note now is that see, earlier between forces F1 and F2 and with U of x there was a cause and effect relation, but this additional displacement field, which is although geometrically compatible but small and arbitrary, so that has no relation with F1 and F2. Okay, so that is the crux of it here. So the known force field, which is in equilibrium, that causes internal stress, let's say sigma x, right? So in case of a beam, what we're saying is this F1 and F2 will cause some bending moment throughout the beam, m of x, and that will lead to stress, right? So this my by I, that is the stress which is caused by this force field. So this is the real force field and this is the real stress, and this real force field causes displacements U1 and U2, let's say at points 1 and 2, and of course it causes U of x as a continuum, but here we were interested in, let's say, 2 points, so it causes U1 and U2, and this real stress field generates or causes a real strain field. Okay, so this will be just my by EI in case of a beam, right? Now since there is a cause and effect relation here, the external work done is going to be 1/2 of F1 U1 plus 1/2 of F2 U2, and the internal energy change is going to be like this. So this we have derived in the energy methods, right? So when we say half of integral over volume sigma times strain dV, we are really saying that this particular area, so this is the energy or this is the work done when there is a cause and effect relation between these forces, right? So here we are just looking at it in a stress strain space, and this is basically the energy balance equation, and this is what we were using in the previous session where we were talking about use of energy methods, right? Now this arbitrary new displacement field, let's say that this is delta u1 at point 1 and delta u2 at point 2. So now if we consider the force field remains the same, F1 F2 remains in equilibrium, that causes the same stress. So this is still, let's say, real force field and real stress field. Okay, but now there is an additional displacement field which is applied, let's say variation of u of x, which causes this this additional strain, but there is no link or no cause and effect. So no cause effect. So there is no cause and effect between the forces and this arbitrary displacement field, or this stress which were caused by the forces and this strain which is caused by the arbitrary displacement field, right? So there is no link between them. And in the stress strain field, if you are looking at, so basically the amount of stress hasn't changed. We have applied an additional virtual strain on top of it, right? So the work done basically is internal work done is this the stress value times the virtual strain, right? Only. So that is a rectangular type of area, and since this is arbitrarily small, we are able to do this approximation. So in this case, what we see is that the external virtual work that is F1 delta U1 plus F2 delta U2. So this is coming in the same logic as we were doing external virtual work for the rigid bodies in case of finding support displacements, support reactions. But now there is an internal virtual work where what we are saying is this is volume integral of the real stress times the virtual strain dV. Right, so this is the internal virtual work. So the principle of virtual work basically says that the external virtual work will be equal to the internal virtual work. Right. So in the earlier case, this internal virtual work was 0, and hence we were just saying that F1 delta 1 plus F2 delta 2 etc. equal to 0. That was only the external virtual work being equal to 0. But in this case, of course, the principle of virtual work implies that the external virtual work, which is this part, will be equal to the internal virtual work, which will be this part. And this kind of logic we can use to solve many problems. So this was the first situation. Let's consider another situation. So again, we start with the basic beam that we had, where let's say these F1, F2 forces were applied and which were causing a displacement u of x. So basically for these 2 points, we can look at it in a reverse way, that a field u of x was applied initially, right, with from where we have u1 u2, and let's say that is causing, so there is a cause and effect relation between this u1 u2 and the f1 f2, which are the forces, right? So these are the real displacements which is causing a real strain, and there is a cause and effect relation between the forces, the displacement and forces, and the strain and stress, right? So so basically in this case, again we can write the complementary energy in this case, right? Because now we are in a situation where we are calculating this area essentially. Okay, so now so here we can still write the energy balance, but that will be the balance of complementary energy, right? And in a similar way, now we can consider that, let's say the displacement field is already applied. So this is the real displacement field which is geometrically compatible, but we apply a small and arbitrary force field which is in equilibrium. So let's say these additional forces which are arbitrarily small, of arbitrary magnitude, but are in equilibrium them we apply. So now between this set of displacements and this set of forces, there is no cause effect relation, right? So now we have this real strain and this virtual stress. Okay, so now the additional work done, if we consider, will be the area of this strip in the stress strain space, right, where we have applied an additional virtual stress at the same strain level. Okay, so now the external virtual work will be delta F3U3 plus delta F4U4, but the internal virtual work will be volume integral of the virtual stress times the real strain dV, right? And it will be ideal to say these things as complementary work. Okay, so that's what this C stands for. So this is the complementary external virtual work, and this is the complementary internal virtual work. But the principle of virtual work will overall state the same thing. Okay, that external virtual work will be same as the internal virtual work. So to summarize, we have a real system which we want to analyze. So that is in equilibrium, and the displacement field is there and it is geometrically compatible. So one situation is when we apply virtual arbitrarily small geometrically compatible displacement field on top of the system, right? And then we write external virtual work equal to internal virtual work. So that is one form of the principle of virtual work. And since here we are applying virtual displacements, it is called principle of virtual displacements, or PVD. Okay, and the other situation is when we take the same real system, but we apply a virtual arbitrary small force field in equilibrium. Okay, so in this case we are applying a set of virtual forces, and hence it is called principle of virtual forces, okay, or PVF, because here we are applying a set of virtual forces. Okay, and since the magnitudes are arbitrary in both cases, we can choose a unit magnitude. So if in PVD we choose a unit magnitude, that gives the unit displacement method, and if in PVF we choose a unit magnitude of the force, that gives the unit load method. Okay, now moving on, just like we had expressions for internal energy for different systems under stretching, under bending, etc. We can have internal virtual work expressions for different scenarios with respect to principle of virtual forces, right? So if we consider, let's say, stretching scenario, so let's say this is the real bar where this is the real force being applied. So we have real stress. So real quantities here are being shown in green. So we have the real stress as P by A, the real strain as P by AE. And if we are, let's say, trying to use principle of virtual forces, we will apply a virtual force, let's say delta P, which will give rise to a virtual stress, which is delta P by A, right? So now when we write internal virtual work, we will have the volume integral of the virtual stress times the real strain dV. Now the virtual stress comes from here, and the real strain comes from here, right? So eventually we get that, and you all know that this volume integral can be converted to a length integral and an area integral combination. And if we assume that the E and P does not change across the cross section, that area integral integrates out to just A, so which will cancel out one of these A's. So we eventually get a length integral. So this is the internal virtual work, where we are saying this is the virtual force times the real force divided by AE dx. And in stretching kind of members, there is often a situation where P, A and E are all constant with respect to x. In that case, this length integral also integrates out, and we get internal virtual work as virtual force times real force times L by AE. Okay. So similarly, we can look at the situation for bending. So let's say the real force field has generated a moment distribution M of x, right, which is shown in green quantity. So the real strain will be like this, okay, and there is a virtual force field which is applied, which causes a virtual moment field, and that causes a virtual stress, right? So the internal virtual work is integral over volume virtual stress times real strain dV, and then virtual stress comes from here and the real strain comes from here, and eventually we reach this expression for the internal virtual work for a beam in bending. Okay, similarly one can generate expressions for internal virtual work for a beam in shear and for a shaft in torsion. Okay, so let's look at an example. So let's say this beam AB, which is cantilevered on the B end, is given, and we have to find theta A and delta A. Okay, now if we want to find delta A, we need to apply a virtual force at A. Okay, so this is the virtual system where we have applied a virtual force at A, and we have chosen the magnitude to be 1 because we can choose any magnitude. And let's say what we are essentially now doing is a unit load type of method. Okay, so for the real system, which sometimes we can also call a system 1, we can draw the free body diagram drawn here, and we can find the expression for moment. So this is the expression for real moment. Similarly, for the virtual system, we can draw a free body at a section X, and we can find the expression for the virtual moment. So this green one is the real moment, this red one is the virtual moment. And from principle of virtual work, what we would write is, so on the left hand side is the external virtual work. Okay, so for external virtual work, we have the force coming from the virtual system and the displacement coming from the real system. Okay, so this is the external virtual work, and this displacement delta A is not known. And on the right hand side we have this is the virtual moment, and this is the real moment divided by EI. Okay, so this basically comes from the expression that we just saw a little while back for beams in bending. So we can do this integration, and eventually we can find out what is delta A. Okay, so this is one way of finding delta A. Now similarly, if we want to find theta A, we need to consider a virtual moment at A. Okay, so here we are creating a second virtual system, or let's say system 3. Now for this second virtual system, again we can draw a free body, we can write the expression for the virtual moment, and then we can move on to write the principle of virtual work, where this one is now the virtual moment. So virtual moment times real slope equals to this is the internal virtual work, where this is the virtual moment, this is the real moment divided by EI, and we can carry out this integration, and eventually theta A can be found. Okay, now in this case we get a negative sign, which indicates that the actual direction of theta A is opposite of what we have assumed. So here we have assumed a clockwise moment. So here a negative sign indicates that theta A is actually counterclockwise. Okay, and that you can also see from the actual deformed shape, that theta A is indeed counterclockwise. Let's look at another example of a truss, where let's say on the left hand side this is the problem being given, and we want to find, let's say, horizontal displacement of joint B. Okay, and A times E is given. So we can do a force analysis, let's say using method of joints. So the real system of forces can be determined for all the members including the support reactions, and then we create a virtual system. And since we want to calculate the horizontal displacement at point B, we will apply a horizontal unit force, or the virtual force at point B. Okay, and then for this virtual system, again we will do a force analysis, and we will have to find forces in all the members. Okay, and then we recall that the overall internal virtual work will be the summation of this for all the members, and here we are able to integrate out the x, so we have the L here, right? So that we can do in a tabular form. So for each member A, B, B, C, and all of them, what we do is we write the length, we write the force in each member due to the real force field, which is in green. We write the force in each member due to the virtual force field, which is in red. Then we calculate this product, right? We get the summation, and then we just apply the principle of virtual work, where this one is the applied virtual force times the horizontal displacement at B, which is not known, equals to the internal virtual work. So this is external virtual work, and this is internal virtual work, right? And after putting in the values from here, we can calculate what is the horizontal displacement of B. And this comes out with a positive sign, which indicates that B displaces to the right, which is in the same direction of the assumed force. Okay, so this is how we can use the principle of virtual work very effectively for solving small as well as large problems. Now let's look at another interesting implication of these discussions, and these come in the form of the so-called reciprocal theorems. Okay, so the first one we will see is called the Maxwell's reciprocal theorem. So for this, let's consider two systems, system 1 and system 2, and let's consider two coordinates on the system. So this points 1 and 2 and points 1 and 2 are corresponding points, let's say, on the two systems. Okay. Now in system 1, there is a force being applied at point 1, which we are calling F1, comma the Roman numeral 1, which is for system 1, right? And there are displacements in system 1. So basically D1, comma I and D2, comma 1. See so between F1, comma 1 and D1, comma 1 and D2, comma 1, there is a cause and effect relation, because these are for the same system, right? Similarly, in system 2, we apply a force on the second point, F2, comma 2, right? And again we measure the displacements at both points 1 and 2, so D1, comma 2 and D2, comma 2. And again between these red forces and displacement, there will be a cause and effect relation, and the green forces and displacements, there will be a cause and effect relation. But between if we take the green forces and red displacements, then there will be no cause and effect, right? Similarly, if we take the red forces and the green displacements, there will be no cause and effect, because these are not related, right? And another thing we will notice that due to the green force, there is an internal moment distribution, which is, let's say, m1x, and due to the red force, there is an internal moment distribution, which is, let's say, m2 of x. Okay. Now we can consider, let's say, system 1 as real and system 2 as virtual, or vice versa. Or we can just call them system 1 and system 2, and then we can write the principle of virtual work. Okay, so if we were to take displacement from system 1 and impose them on system 2, so displacements from here, if we impose on system 2, it's like we are doing a principle of virtual displacement type of thing. So what we have is so F1, comma 1 is like the real force times times D1, comma 2, so displacement of point 1 from the second system, this is like the virtual displacement, right? So this is external virtual work for system 1, and then the internal virtual work will be given by m1, which is from the real one, and m2 which is from the virtual one, divided by ei dx. Okay, similarly we can write we can consider, let's say, the other situation where we take the displacements from system 1 and apply it to system 2. Okay, in that case we can write the virtual work principle for system 2, where, let's say, we are saying this force is the real force, and this displacement which is coming from the first system is the virtual displacement, right? So this becomes the external virtual work, and then on the right hand side we have the internal virtual work. Okay, and what we see is that the right hand side of both of these expressions are same. So basically that leads us to this very interesting result, that the force of system 1 times displacement of system 2 at the same point is equal to the force of system 2 times displacement of system 1 at the same point. Okay, so just to see a quick illustration of this, let's consider an example. Let's consider a simply supported beam where the coordinates being chosen are like that the first coordinate 1 is at L by 2, and the second coordinate 2 is at the tip. So this is L by 2 and another L by 2 for the second one. So for both systems 1 and 2 we have chosen the same coordinates. In system 1 we have applied a force at point 2, Okay, and at system 2 we have applied a force at point 1. Okay, and if if this Maxwell's theorem is true, what we are saying is now in this case the magnitude of forces in both is same. So what we are saying is that P times d1 comma 2 is equal to P times d2 comma 1, which will mean that the displacements, let's say d1 comma 2, should be equal to d2 comma 1, right? So what it means is, what it implies is that in system 1, if we compute delta 1, and in system 2 if we calculate delta 2, these two deltas should come out to be same, right, if the reciprocal theorem is true. So these two displacements can be easily calculated by, let's say, moment area type of method. So that is being shown here, and you can work it out that based on the BMD, the bending moment diagram in both cases, it is possible to prove that this d1 and d2 come out to be same, which is also predicted by the reciprocal theorem. Now a generalization of the Maxwell's reciprocal theorem is the so-called Betti's reciprocal theorem. So it basically just generalizes it in the sense that Maxwell's theorem considered only two coordinates or two locations in a system. Betti's theorem can consider an arbitrary number of locations. So let's say there are 5 locations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, marked like this. This is system 1 and this is system 2. And we can have a green set of forces and displacement, and we can have a red set of forces and displacement. And by similar logic earlier, what we are saying is that the summation of all the green forces of system 1 times the red displacements from system 2 at corresponding locations. So this left hand summation and the right hand summation, where we are taking forces from the red system or system 2 and displacements from the green system or system 1. So these two are equal. So this is what Betti's theorem implies. And of course, if you choose only two coordinates, then it becomes the Maxwell's theorem. Okay, so these are important theorems. Sometimes they become very useful in judging few things with respect to systems just by inspection. Sometimes we might have calculated few things. There may be few things which are not yet known, but if we are aware of these reciprocal theorems, those calculations become very easy. And later on we will also see that these theorems imply that the stiffness and the flexibility coefficients, when they are formed in the form of a matrix, they will be symmetric matrices. So that is something we will see a little later, and that will have a direct consequence from these reciprocal theorems.